Here with us now for a look at what happens next, trial attorney and legal analyst and good friend of the show, Misty Marris. Good to see you, Misty. Good morning.
Good morning, Hannah.
You have been following this case. You and I have talked about it repeatedly on camera and off camera. There is so much interest on these two men. Were the parole rulings a surprise to you when we saw them play out Thursday and Friday nights?
You know, Hannah, they were not. And there's the reason being, first of all, this is a violent crime. At its core, it's a double homicide. And so it would be very unusual for somebody to go before the parole board for the first time. I know there's been a lot in the legal saga of this case, but this was their first time before the parole board and be granted parole that first time around when the violent crime was the underlying act. So that's number one. Number two is we knew from some filings back in May that they were deemed a moderate risk. So the parole board does an assessment. That assessment came back as a moderate risk. It could have been a low risk. Moderate is a caution flag to the parole board. So those two factors alone led me to believe that it would be an uphill battle for them to be granted parole first time around. That being said, they now have a 3-year period where they'll be under review again. It could have been 5, 7, 10, or 15 years, Hannah. So 3 years means that they'll have an opportunity to seek release relatively soon.
Misty, can you talk to us about what went into the board's decision to rule the way they did? What were they weighing here? What were they looking at?
So the 3 R's of parole: rehabilitation, risk, and remorse. Those are the 3 factors that the parole board is really focused on. And primarily the question is, will these individuals be a threat to society if they are released? And one of the factors that the parole board strongly focused on for both brothers was infractions during their time of incarceration. They were very focused on the fact that both of them had cell phones, that they had other contraband, that Eric had engaged in fights. So basically their behavior behind bars. Now, we had heard they've been model prisoners, but there were multiple infractions both brothers had during their time of incarceration. Now, some people say, well, cell phones, that doesn't really sound like so big of a deal. But Hannah, what it's about is you can't follow the rules while you're behind bars. Who's to say you're going to follow the rules if you're released? So now they both have that opportunity to have that squeaky clean record for the next 3 years before they have their next bid for parole.
All right, Missy, thank you for that. Let's switch gears. The other big headline on Friday, the Department of Justice releasing transcripts of its interview with Ghislaine Maxwell to House lawmakers. I've said it before, this was over 200 pages long. What you read and what you heard, did you find Maxwell to be credible? How much weight should we really be putting on what she said? Again, just reminding our viewers, she is a convicted sex offender and has been indicted on perjury charges twice.
Yes, she definitely has a slew of credibility issues. And when she's sitting for this interview, there'd be no incentive to do so unless she thought she was going to derive some benefit at some point. Keep in mind, all of her appellate options, except for one, which is pending. Hopefully they want the Supreme Court to hear it in the fall. All of her appellate options are basically extinguished. And so this may have been her last chance to get some sort of benefit from the DOJ or maybe even President Trump. You know, she was given immunity, Hannah, but a limited form of immunity. It's called Queen for a Day. That's what it's called. It sounds a lot more regal, but it's actually this very limited form of immunity where if she's lying, the immunity would be extinguished. So she would not have that immunity. That being said, there really wasn't much that came out during this interview. We didn't really learn anything new. And the mere fact that it was made public by the Department of Justice tells me they're not intending to move forward with any new charges or further investigation against others. Yeah, there really wasn't much to go on. But the fact that it's public, if the DOJ wanted to pursue something, they would keep it under wraps, because imagine this would tip off individuals that would be subject to investigation. It could impact prosecution. So in my view, the fact that this was made public means there really isn't much more to come from this.
And you're right, there was not much that was incriminating in this report. She even said the president was never inappropriate with anybody in the time that I was with him. That's obviously a quote. I think one thing she said that was a bit interesting, that where a lot of us are paying attention to, is that Jeffrey Epstein did not die by suicide. What does that revelation tell you about this case?
So when I first saw that, I thought it was very interesting. Maybe she knows something more. But then she went on to say she didn't believe he died by suicide. She didn't think that that's something he would do. And she also said she wasn't aware of any rich and powerful people who would want to silence him. She didn't believe that to be the case either. What she said was prison's a pretty rough place, especially that particular facility, which she spent time in as well. And you can give somebody $25 at the commissary to commit a murder. That's the type of environment that it is. So she was saying that there was, in her view, she believes there to be something that happened inside, not really related to any of the salacious or theories that we've heard out there for the entirety of this, this case and since Jeffrey Epstein's death. So it was interesting to say the least, but it wasn't really hitting on some of those theories that are out there. And ultimately, Hannah, it was very speculative. It was just her opinion.
Absolutely. Misty Marris, I always love having you on breaking down these cases. Thank you. It's always good to see you.
Thanks, Hannah. Great to see you.